Welcome back to the Bums in the Bleachers podcast. We are back to talk playoff baseball for once. I am your co-host, the Dram Daddy, alongside Prazmaster right next to me. Mike, we are playoff bound, man. We're talking playoff baseball. We're talking October Cubs baseball.
It's a beautiful sight. It's a long time coming. First time since 2020, first time in a full season since 2018, and possibly get a first series win, a first playoff game win since 2017. It feels so long that we've had any sort of success when it comes to that. But very excited to get going. Had a very encouraging week of games prior to it back at home against the Mets and the Cardinals. The offense has come back alive, got some good pitching performances. So, I will get into one topic that, it does kind of hurt us a little bit going into this into the series with the Padres, but overall feeling very well and, very excited for the challenge that this brings.
I'm excited. I am optimistically cautious, as I think I always am. Anybody who listens to the show knows, I am optimistically cautious. I want to invest all my emotions into this. I want to, dive in all in, but there are parts of me that still feel a little uneasy with this team. And, we'll obviously dive a little bit deeper throughout the episode on maybe some of my concerns and some of the things that I think that the Cubs should be able to do well against the Padres in this upcoming series. But, overall, like I said, you can't beat October baseball. There's nothing like it. I think it's one of the sports where, between here and hockey, where I think every minute detail matters, right? Where I think like football could be really slow, where you're running the ball, you're setting up, play action, you're setting up the pass, and there's ebbs and flows of the game. And I think basketball, especially now with the NBA, like you just see these massive runs back and forth, right? Where
For
it's like
sure.
the team could be up 20 and then they're down by 2 and then like the other
And
team
that,
goes on a run and then the
and then the
last minutes of
timeout
the game.
fest at the fourth quarter. Yeah, exactly.
Right, right. Where I think with baseball, specifically baseball, and I even put hockey in the same realm as well, is every pitch, every pass with the puck matters. It's like there's so much action where it's like even though baseball is a very slow game, every pitch matters, right? Like every foul ball, like every single, anytime somebody's on base, any home run that's hit, any strikeout feels big. Everything just feels so big, and I'm just I'm excited for playoff baseball again, and I hope this team doesn't break my heart again. I don't know if I have them going all the way to the World Series, but I would like to see them get out the first round at least, and you know see what happens against the Brewers if they get out.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I think we can safely say this, that no matter who wins this series, obviously we're Cubs fans, so we'll root for them as long as they last in the playoffs. If it happens to be the Padres that win the series, I think it's safe to say we'll root for them against the Brewers too, because I'm
Oh
sick and
yeah,
tired of, the Brewers stealing all the thunder from the Cubs in recent years. And even more so this year when the Cubs were in first and then the Brewers ran them down and had that stretch where they just would not lose. But, anything can happen in October, and, we'll get into it as we go on.
yeah. So I mean, we're gonna talk through a bevy of things here, right? We're gonna talk through, the final week of the year. The 2 out of 3 losses to the Mets. We're going to talk about how they finished the year against the Cardinals. We want to talk through some of our wild card round roster predictions because I don't know if that's fully been set yet. We just found out who game one starter is, but I don't know if the rest of the roster's been announced yet. Um, we want to go through how we think the Cubs stack up against the Padres, as we know well, 2 games, maybe 3 if it's necessary, are going to be all at Wrigley Field. They were fighting for that home field advantage in the final week, and God, that was a nail biter down to the end.
Yeah, the Padres
Yeah,
didn't make it easy, and the
did
thing that
not.
I'll tell you this, I was really worried after Friday night because by the Padres beating the Diamondbacks in that game, that eliminated the Diamondbacks from the playoffs, which
Yep.
meant they had nothing left to play for at that point, at a time
Right.
when it looked like maybe the Cubs might really need a win from the Diamondbacks over the Padres. Thankfully, the Cubs just took care of business themselves against the Cardinals, against we'll see where that team is going, because man, that looks like a whole mess down in St. Louis, honestly.
Yeah, and I think St. Louis, to be honest with you, probably overachieved a little bit this year, where I think we all assumed this would be a down year for St. Louis. They were looking to rebuild, retool, however you want to put it. And they were in a playoff race till maybe the final month of the year. They were, only a few games out of that final wild card spot, for a long time. And so they just really kind of started to falter and fade off, which I thought they should have done a lot earlier. But there was points of the season. I think they got all the way to first place. I want to say, if memory serves correctly, they got on a really big hot streak, and they either got in first place or they really kind of tested us for first place at the time. Uh,
Yeah, like right around the time they played each other, that 4-game series, or was it a 4-game series? Yeah, in St. Louis. There, I remember they were getting close.
yeah, so I mean, they honestly, I'm not surprised that they are. I think they're going to take a downslide again next year, and rightfully so. They need to kind of figure out what direction they're going in. But um, I thought they overachieved this year, and but I think ultimately the Cubs and Brewers were better. I think the Reds proved that they were better, and they made a strong run towards the end. But it's going to be exciting baseball, man. There was a lot of stuff that really came down to the wire these last few games to end the season.
Right.
We saw Toronto win the division over the Yankees at the end. We
Yep.
saw Cleveland was the biggest shocker, overtaking
Oh
Detroit and
man,
the AL Central.
what a
15 and a
dogfight
half
that
games,
was. Yeah.
15 and a half games back. They beat the Tigers in the series that they faced them, and then they went, to face on, two other teams, 3-3, and they both, I want to say, did they both lose on the final day, or was it? I can't remember how it played out, but Cleveland obviously took the division.
Right. Yeah.
Um, we've got, Boston sneaking in. I think Boston really kind of overachieved. I don't think anybody picked the Red Sox to be in the playoffs this year.
I liked them preseason, especially after the Bregman move. But
Okay.
they made a lot of moves this offseason. I thought they were going to be the team that won the AL East. But that division was as much of a powerhouse as it as it was in probably more so in like the early 2010s and 2000s. It used to be with like the Yankees and Red Sox battling it out. Now the Blue Jays are a factor in it too. But yeah, that all came down to the last game of the season, like you said, the AL East and
Yep.
the AL Central, the last NL wild card spot between the Reds and
Yeah.
Mets. Yeah,
Oh, that was brutal for the Mets. I mean, what a epic collapse and heartbreak, that those Mets fans had to endure. I mean, you spend, three quarter of $1 billion on a player, and you are hoping, you break back Pete Alonso. The starting pitching was really great to start the year. You spend money on Senga, a couple years ago, and they ultimately give up that last spot in the final game of the year. They lose 4-0 to the Marlins, which did you catch that too? The Marlins, how they all went out. They took a team photo like they had just won the World Series, and
yes.
the Mets broadcasters were like,
Hmm.
"You would have thought they won the World Series the way they're out there.
I
This
was gonna
is the
say
World Series."
right. Not been a particularly popular week for Mets broadcasters. Some news involving the Cubs too, with them talking about where Matt Shaw was on the last show we did. And
Yeah,
then
I heard that.
yeah, but yeah, I saw that they were kind of not all that pleased with what the Marlins were doing there. And it did feel I know there was some frustration on the part of Mets fans because like they had two pretty historic collapses in like '07 and '08 in which like it came down to a series with the Marlins too. So they have like PTSD real bad with the Marlins from those previous years. How you doing, HBIC? Um I will say one big problem I do have with this playoffs is after the last 2 years of the Cubs finishing their seasons with an 83-79 record and not making the playoffs, that we have a team that finished 83-79 and is in the freaking playoffs in the Reds. Ugh.
I didn't even think about that. I mean, that's a great point. But I mean, yeah, how about that NL Central? I think the NL Central obviously was a lot better than I think we thought it was going to be. We both felt like it was a very winnable division at the beginning of the year, and now you have three teams from the Central making the playoffs, two from the West, and surprisingly, only one from the East. With Atlanta obviously having a down year, the Mets missing the playoffs,
Right.
Washington still rebuilding. the Marlins are just still the Marlins and,
Yep.
the bottom dwellers. But wow, what an absolutely amazing weekend to finish the year. You cannot draw it up any better if you're MLB, if you're Rob Manfred, that, you had so many tight races the very last weekend of the year and so many things like that were still up for grabs and up for decision, right? Like even just seeding, like Milwaukee didn't lock up that number one seed over Philly until the last weekend, really. Um, I think, like I said, Seattle locked up the number two spot after
Wow.
winning the division and knocking out Houston, who surprisingly is not in the playoffs this year, which they are
Yeah.
in the playoffs every freaking year. So
Hey, do you know what the last year was that they missed the playoffs, by the way?
I want to say it was 2016, and there was something that happened that year too.
It
So
was, yep.
all right, we'll see if that's good juju. But uh, before we start talking playoff baseball, let's talk about how the way the season ended. Right? They played the Mets. That was a very lackluster effort against the team. And again, I know the Mets were fighting for something, but then watching the Mets collapse against the Marlins
Right.
was even makes this even more frustrating. Where they lost 2 out of 3 to New York, and then they end up sweeping the Cardinals, but man, not even the Cubs can help the Mets. And there's the way that the Cubs have been playing the last couple months. Right above 500 baseball.
Right.
Um, but man, they really not even they could help the Mets get in the playoffs. I mean, what were your thoughts from that series against the Mets? Because I know I was feeling very frustrating with the pitching. I was feeling very frustrated with the hitting in a couple of those games. But yeah, what are
Well,
your thoughts on that series?
I mean, to start in game one, the Cubs bats busted out. They scored 6 runs through like the first 2 or 3 innings there. Jumped out to a 6-1 lead, and then, you know, we all kind of had to take a pause for a second there because Cade Horton started that game. And then after 3 innings, Cade Horton was not in the game. And we were all wondering, okay, is this just Craig, trying to take it easy with Cade, get him ready for the playoffs? And we get the news later that, he had a fractured rib, and, we'll get into what the implications of all that is later. But at least for that game, that kind of, you know, set the Cubs back a little bit, because if you have Cade Horton available to give you like 5, 6 innings at least, you feel a lot better about, the Cubs' chances to win that game.
Yeah.
Wound up being kind of back and forth. The Mets would tie it 6-6. Then they'd eventually take the lead 7-6. The Cubs would tie it 7-7 themselves. And then in the eighth, with Caleb Thielbar pitching, who had been a very reliable relief pitcher all season for the Cubs, he's kind of showing some chinks in the armor here. Gave up kind of a backbreaking home run to Francisco Alvarez, and that was basically all that was written for that game.
Yeah, and I know we were texting too, where I think that game, the most frustrating part about that game was that Craig Counsell let Thielbar sit when he had already had the three batter minimum, and he's going up against a righty, with the
Yep.
game on the line in, I want to say that was the eighth inning. Yeah, eighth
Yeah.
inning,
Top eight.
Alvarez hits the home run. So, somebody who you said has been very trustworthy, obviously has been really, really good against lefties. Uh, Craig decides to leave him out there just a little bit longer than I would have liked to see, with the guy on base, and a lot of playoff implications,
Right.
in swing, and they ended up ultimately giving up that game.
Well, and when you couple it with the fact that, you had that loss, and then no promises on that one, Gordo. Sorry. Um, yeah, that loss that just came off the verge of the Cubs getting swept in 4 games in Cincinnati. That was a 5-game losing streak. We thought like potentially, they had the playoff spot clinched, but is the season falling apart on us? Are we at risk of having to go to San Diego for those games? And, luckily later on the Cubs would get their stuff together, but that was a very annoying loss. And I'll say this too, you know, like we mentioned, Caleb Thielbar got allowed to face the right-handed hitter after facing 3 batters where he could have been pulled. And this was on the heels of he had an off day the day before. And then I believe Brad Keller had only been used once the entire Cincinnati Red series. So
Yeah.
you would think he'd be the guy to go to with 2 outs in a tie game, a runner on base facing a tough right-handed hitter. That's the guy you go to. And, I don't know if Craig was asleep at the wheel or if he really thought that Caleb could get past him, but wound up backfiring there. So, tough way to lose that game. But they would wind up salvaging a game as we move on to Wednesday here.
Yeah, they did. I mean, and there's not a ton to say about this game. I mean, because it was pretty much a blowout, of a game. And I think the good thing was to see Matthew Boyd have a really strong start in his final appearance of the year. He obviously, I mean, I'm going to pull up the stats here, but he went, let's see,
I think he went like
so
5 1/3 or
six,
5 2/3,
five and
five.
a third. Yeah, five and a third. You know, 2 hits, 2 runs. One of them was a home run, 3 strikeouts, 1 walk. But I think like a fine tune up, and that, to be honest, that's a really good Mets lineup.
Yeah.
Um, so I think to limit them to just 2 runs in his final outing gives me a little bit of confidence heading into the playoffs with Matthew Boyd, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the show. But also good to see Palencia back and get some action. And
Yeah.
he had a strikeout in 2/3 of an inning. They got Savelli involved a little bit too. So I mean, this was just, I mean, it was such a great game, great blowout, great way to bounce back. But I think what really was frustrating was I was hoping that they would have taken the series after this, and instead 8-5 loss, which
Well,
Imanaga was really bad in this game.
what one thing I do want to say about the Wednesday win, though, is that,
Yeah.
they got out to a pretty nice lead again, just like they did on Tuesday.
Hmm.
And I was there. I was there at the game. It was like a last minute decision for me. There was a pregame event at Wrigley Field that I went to, or not at Wrigley Field, but at the DraftKings Sportsbook attached to Wrigley Field that John Boy Media was hosting. That
Oh,
I
okay.
went. Yep, yeah, I went for that. I got to meet some cool people. Actually, met up with a buddy of mine who's, if you're on White Sox Twitter, Brett Hafner. He was there as well too. But got to pal around with a pair of Mets fans and bought a last minute ticket, sat with them through the game, and had a pretty nice experience. They actually, even in a pretty bad loss for them, they were enjoying it and they enjoyed Go Cubs Go. But I do remember, being a little nervous during that Wednesday game that, like, the previous game, they got out to the big lead again. Now they're getting out to
Yep.
the big lead again. Are we going to blow it again, or can we actually, hold it together this time? Thankfully, Wednesday night they were able to do that. So, and
Yeah.
as you said, nice to see Palencia back. Nice to see Savale, shut it down with an old school 3 inning save. And then, yeah, Thursday. This is maybe one that you worry about for October because Shota Imanaga started this game and
Yep.
things were not pretty for him.
No, and I think what was so disappointing in this is I'm going to share this here, but they got to McLean, later in the game. He ended up giving up 5 runs, even though he had 11 strikeouts, but he gave up 3 home runs in that game, and I think which is what is really cool about about this start, and maybe gives a little bit of hope. They're coming off like a week, back-to-back weeks where they've faced some pretty good pitching, young pitching with Paul Skeens, being able to get to Paul Skeens over the last couple of weeks. They got to McLean, who's a rising star in New York, rookie. I mean, his stuff is nasty. He looks like he's throwing a wiffle ball out there, some of
Yeah.
half the time. His stuff is filthy. He was coming in with the sub 2 ERA and he left with the +2 ERA because the Cubs
Well,
got to him. But then I'm going to pull up Imanaga's numbers. He goes 5 2/3, which I think was probably 2/3 too long. He
correct.
gave up
Yeah.
9 hits, 8 runs, 8 of them earned, 2 home runs. Wind was blowing out, so that obviously is going to be against disadvantage to him because he's a fly ball pitcher. But the last couple starts for Imanaga have been a little suspect, and it's not making me feel super great about him. In October at Wrigley.
We'll get into it in a little bit, but there is a statistic about the Padres that does have me feeling somewhat more comfortable with Shota Imanaga facing them. But as it stands now, yeah, 2 home runs allowed. And as you said, like probably left out for one more inning than he had to. And again, frustrating again that like I brought up that Craig did not go to Brad Keller in the Tuesday night game. You would have thought that Brad Keller or, possibly a Mike Soroka or, someone that maybe could have went like multiple innings after Imanaga had went 5 could have taken over for him and kept that a somewhat more manageable game.
Yeah.
One moment in this game too that really annoyed me was, if you remember, in the top of the first inning, the Mets had, I believe, runners on second and third, and a pop-up got hit into foul territory that Matt Shaw
Yep.
was camped under, and he was trying to call off Dansby Swanson because he was camped under it. Dansby gets over to it. He winds up making the catch and tripping
Yeah.
up Matt Shaw. Dansby falls into the stands, and because he falls into the stands with the
Dead
ball,
ball.
it's a dead
Dead
ball.
ball.
Mets are
Runners
allowed to score a
advance.
run there. Yep,
Yep.
exactly. Which, had Matt Shaw just caught it and stayed in foul territory, it's just 2 outs. Maybe things reset a little bit better. Maybe Shota gets settled, and instead we have some chaos there. But you know what? I mean, overall, even though the Cubs lost that Mets series, it was really nice to see the bats break out like they did after, scoring only 7 runs in 4 games in Cincinnati over the weekend.
Yeah, and I think, listen, some of the highlights that I'm really excited about, and I think we've even texted over this too, and I don't know how I fully feel about this, but we got to see some slug return to Seiya Suzuki, Pete Crow Armstrong. Ian
Yep.
Happ has been playing pretty well. Nico's on a tear, just putting the ball everywhere. So I think there are definitely some pluses from this from the series. Even though they lost the series, it was like you said, it was good to see the offense break out. I think specifically it was good to see the slug return because I think
Absolutely.
Seiya Suzuki, I think, had 2 home runs after the All-Star break leading into the final week, where he's now hit, I think, 5 home runs over those last 2 series. If I'm not
Five
mistaken, 4 or 5.
5 home runs in the last 4 games. The last game of this series, and then
Yeah.
the next 3 against the Cardinals. Yes.
Yeah. And I think he had two all of after the All-Star break. So
Yeah.
again, really great to see that slug return. Again, Pete Crow Armstrong showing some slug again. So I think there are some positives. The thing that I think upset me most about this game specifically was that, you are fighting for a playoff spot. And at this point, they locked up the spot. They're fighting for home field. You're still fighting for something. You're fighting for home field advantage, right?
Yeah.
And not only that, you're going into the playoffs fighting for something. Why are we not managing a game like this is a playoff game, right?
Correct.
Like,
Yeah.
why are we letting Imanaga go an extra, out, 2/3 of an inning when you can see he's clearly already given up 6 runs? And again, these were not, maybe a couple of them were cheap short, but he was giving up the long ball. So it's not like he was, and he was getting squared up. So it's not like, he was just falling into some bad luck. He was getting hit. And to me, like, just like any player cannot just turn it on, when it's playoff time, I think the same thing is with the manager. So when you have a manager that is managing a game just very lacklusterly and just very laissez-faire, and you're not treating it like a playoff game, like, how is Craig going to be able to turn the switch on when things actually start to matter now, where every single pitch, every single out matters? So that is my concern with that game specifically.
Yeah. Yeah. I you're spot on there. And I mean, said it very well. Like, the Cubs did not have home field advantage clinched at that point. I believe after the win on Wednesday night, they got the magic number down to 2 at that point, which meant, had they won this game, they could have potentially, regardless of what the Padres did, could have won this game, then won on Friday and had it clinched on that Friday, and had like 2 days where you could have, gone and experimented with, what you need to do for the playoffs. And, instead, let Shota Imanaga go 1 inning too long, and they
Yep.
paid the price for it. And, I'll say this. One of my biggest gripes, I would say, with Craig is that I wish he would treat games in which the Cubs only trail by a run as if those games are tied, or as if the Cubs are leading by a run. I feel like more often than not, he's hesitant to go to some of his higher leverage relievers to try to keep a game close in order to, in order to, like, maybe save them for a game that they're winning, when in reality, every game is sacred. You know, you
Yeah.
want to give yourself a chance to win every game.
Well, especially for a guy that has not had much playoff success as well, right? Where it's like this is an opportunity for you to, really switch things up, improve on some of the things you've learned over your tenure in the playoffs and, the inability to get pretty much past the NLCS at this point. So I think it was a good opportunity for him to really kind of like silence the doubters and really make some moves to show like I'm going to treat these games like playoff games and I'm going to build a certain kind of intensity with my team that hopefully carries over into October. But he really played it like it was just like a game in April or May,
Yeah.
which is a little concerning for me. So you know again, there was some positives, so I don't want to be Debbie Downer on the whole series. They ended up going into playing St. Louis. They ended up sweeping the Cards in the final series of the year, but as you mentioned, it's the St. Louis team that really wasn't playing for anything. The Mets
No.
were. Those games felt like playoff games because they were fighting to get into the playoffs, and the Cubs, obviously came up short. So I don't, that those are my final thoughts with the Mets series. I can move
Yeah,
on to the Cardinals, but
for sure. We can move on to
yeah,
this. Yep.
yeah, but then the Cubs, again they came back the next day. I think the doctor called for just the right person that we were going to
Yeah.
see on the mound.
Our very favorite Cardinal pitcher, Miles Michaelis.
I
Absolutely.
love this guy. I know he is my favorite. He is my favorite Cards pitcher of all time. I mean, honestly, um, it is unbelievable the numbers that Pete Crow Armstrong and Michael Bush have against this guy. I mean, if they were to face Michaelis every game of their career, I mean, these guys are Hall of Famers.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we're looking at
That's a great way to
Otani,
put it.
Barry Bonds, Hank Aaron, Babe Ruth type numbers if they're going against. Because I mean, Pete Crow Armstrong is what 5 for 9 against Michaelis. Is it 5 for 9?
Right. I mean, Bush had 2 of his 3 home runs on July 4th against Michaelis then.
Yep.
I believe he got one later in the game on this game, but I don't know if it was specifically against Michaelis. Yeah, we'll always look forward to any, Cubs start against Miles Michaelis.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Cubs win this one going away. It was a great timeout. I was there for this game and, got the magic number down to 1. Everyone was very hyped
Yep.
after it. So I
Colin
don't know.
Ray pitched a really great game.
Oh, he was fantastic. He has been like a huge unsung hero for the Cubs this year. Like from the
Oh
from
yeah.
the point in which he had to join the rotation after Justin Steele went down, and I believe the Cubs wound up going something like 18-8 or 18-9 in the games that he wound up starting this year. It's not always been the prettiest with Colin Ray, but I mean, he's gotten the job done as a guy who's like a number 5, replacement starter.
Yeah. I mean, great job by Colin Ray. Like you said, I mean, you said it best. Unsung hero of this team, especially with the amount of injuries they had to their starting rotation. Losing Justin Steele at the beginning of the year. Cade Horton obviously going down towards the end. Javier Assad starting the year on the IL for three-fourths of the year, I think it was.
Yeah.
More than 50%. And then the Cubs' inability to really add any rotational help on top of that. He really showed up big in a game that they really needed to bounce back and win and give a little bit more breathing room. And, he went out there and he shoved. He did the job.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well done,
Then
Colin
they
Ray.
go on. Well done, Colin Ray. I mean, tons of mod sticks. I'm hoping for the people out in
Oh,
Iowa.
yes. The one bar in Iowa where he's from. Yep.
Yeah. Uh, Great job to Jamison Tyon, riding the ship. I think Tyon, you never know what you're going to get with Tyon. When he's good, he's really good. When he's bad, he's not so great. But went out and pitched a great game, and they ended up, clinching the number 1 seed, wild card seed, getting home field advantage thanks to Jamison Tyon, and again the offense just continuing to produce. And then, yeah, I mean Sunday, really nothing to
Well,
play for. But I know
well,
you got some on Saturday.
Yeah, go back to Saturday for a second because there is something that happened in this game. Well, two things in particular I want to point out. One, another Caleb Thielbar concern there because, the Cubs look to be running away with this game. It was 4 to
Ah, yeah.
1 through the 6th inning, and then Thielbar comes in, coughs up a 2-run homer to Jordan Walker. Made it
Yep.
kind of tight there, but the Cubs bust out for a couple runs. Now, finally, some juice has been brought back to the Cubs Cardinals rivalry a bit from this game
Oh
because
yeah. Oh,
because
you're
Mike
okay. Yep. I know what you're
Michael
going. Where you're going.
Bush Michael Bush had himself a hell of a game. He had again continued his hot streak against the Cardinals, hit 2 home runs, then he got a double, then he got a triple. So he's a single away from the cycle. And he comes up in the bottom of the 8th inning.
Yep.
And Ali Marmol, Cardinals manager, decides, you know what, we're not messing with him. We want to try and win this game because the Cardinals still apparently have something to play for at this point, and their offense is really going to come back from down, 4 runs, and Brad Keller damn near blew that save for them, but thankfully it didn't happen that way. But yeah, intentional walk to Michael Bush with a chance to hit for the cycle. Ali Marmol, I hate it, but at the same time, I also kind of love it because you helped bring some hate back to the Cardinals for me that I had lost over the past few years.
Yeah, I don't know if I really had that much of a problem with it, to be honest. I didn't love it, but I thought it was a whether they were going to win that game or not. I'm not letting a guy hit the cycle against me if I have the opportunity not to let him hit the cycle. And not only that, they had a righty coming up in, Nico Horner, when they had a righty on the mound. So, they had a righty pitcher on the mound, lefty that's absolutely destroying the baseball all day long. I don't think I'm really giving him the opportunity to hit for the cycle. And I don't care if there's nothing to play for or not. It's a rivalry. I'm not letting that guy hit the cycle against me. So I'm not completely mad at it. Like, it's the right move. I will say that it's cowardice, but
Yes,
that's fine. I mean, that's where, that's the mountain they want to live on. So, let them. They're going to be enjoying October at home or Cancun or wherever they're off resorting, but you know, it is what it is. I'm not totally upset at it.
for sure. Something I actually forgot to say about the Friday game too, which I thought was awesome. You had P. Crow Armstrong going deep in that game. That brought him to a very exclusive club in Cubs history.
Yeah.
30 homers, 30 steals, and also 30 doubles too, which I believe that that trio, he's the only
Yeah,
member of. But the 30 steals and
he
30
is.
home runs, it's him and it's our all-time favorite Cub, Sammy Sosa, who are the
Samuel
only two.
Samuel Sosa. Yep. So
Absolutely.
you're correct. He is the only Cub to have 30-30-30, which is, I mean, especially in this day in baseball, where I think we talked about it a few episodes back, steals are just not big in the game anymore, and they're starting to revive a bit. It's great to see steals coming back to baseball, but it's nowhere on the plane where you're going to see a Ricky Henderson, 150 steals a game anymore. And I mean, hell, I don't even think you're going to really see like, I think what was it? Acuna was the last one who had 70. He was
Yep.
part of the 40-70 club a year ago, which I mean, that was against us. And obviously, I know you
Mhm.
were really pissed about the delay in the game and all that, but
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, you're
Don't
not
talk to
seeing,
Boog and JD about that. Yeah.
yeah, you're really not seeing guys steal bases like that anymore. And it's just fine. But I mean, 30-30-30, truly impressive from Pete Crow Armstrong. And we got to see some of the regression in the second half of the year, but we have to remember the kid is only 23, 24 years old. I mean, he's
Mhm.
still in his first full year.
Right.
And it's just a lot of promise. So I think, if they're able to develop his eye and have him take some more pitches and maybe not swing at everything. He's got kind of like a Vlad Guerrero thing going on where he swings a lot and at everything, and a lot of the times he could hit bad pitches, but he also strikes out a ton. So
Right. Gotta take the good with the bad with him.
yeah. So all right. So any other thoughts? I mean, they finished the year, with the sweep of the Cardinals. They took the game 2-0. Javier Assad started that game, which was good to give him some
Yeah.
reps. Jordan Wicks came in, got got the save. I think he went 3 innings. Was it 3 innings in that game?
Yes, yep, had 3 inning save where yeah, he took over. I think there might have been one reliever in between Assad and Wicks, but yeah, saved the bullpen for October. Thank you to Jordan Wicks there. Um, I will say one thing that I was impressed in this game, and I really only had one eye on it because about 4 innings into this game is when the Bears game started, so that took my full attention for
Yep.
that time being. But uh, did you happen to see who was catching this game for the Cubs?
I didn't. I honestly, to be completely honest with you, it was the same thing. I was kind of like half watching it, half watching the Bears. I mean, I was fully watching the Bears. I had the Cubs on my phone because at this point, they had clinched. They're really not
Right.
playing for anything. So I just had it on my phone and I was kind of skimming back and forth on it, but I didn't see who was catching. Was it Ballesteros?
It was Moises Ballesteros. Yes, they actually had him in the
Okay.
field for the last game of the season, and I mean, to
Makes
his
sense.
credit, helped contribute to a shutout. That was very nice. Later
Yeah.
in the game, Reese McGuire would come in and catch. Ballesteros would move over to first base. Didn't exactly look out of place there. So, something to consider for, next season because there has always been somewhat of a concern with Ballesteros. Everyone knows he's a great hitter. Um, just weren't sure if there would be a position for him or if he would have to be a career DH. But at least for one game, we did see that he could hold his own back there. The one
Yeah.
other takeaway I did have from this game too, Seiya Suzuki continuing to stay hot. That was the streak of
Yep.
that completed the streak of 4 games where he hit a total of 5 home runs. So
And a
shout out
grand
Seiya.
slam in there too. So hit a grand
Yes,
slam in that.
that is right.
All right. Well, season is officially over. We are, signing off on the 2025 regular season, finishing 92 and 70. They felt at the beginning of the year 90 wins is going to get you into, ensure that you're going to get a playoff spot. They were correct. And to your point, 83 actually got, a team into, um, but to be safe, hey, listen, I would much rather them win over 90, take the number one wild card seed, have home field
For sure.
advantage, than have to go on the road and play the Dodgers in the first round. So
Right, right.
I will take that. But you want to talk through um, the wild card round roster predictions because I don't think they've been set yet as of us going live on the show. So maybe they've figured out the roster while we've been on the air. I don't know for sure, but
I got marquee here on the side. I haven't seen anything yet officially announced, so
okay,
maybe we might not even get it until tomorrow. We'll see there.
all right. Well,
Um,
I'm gonna throw on your predictions because this is something you sent me earlier today.
okay. Once you get it pulled up. Okay, so yeah. Um, and just to preface this, so I don't know exactly how it works for the playoffs. I do know for the regular season that the breakdown in the roster, obviously, we're at a 26-man roster these days, and during the regular season, the way it works is that you can have up to 13 pitchers, but that's the most you can have. You can have less than that if you want more position players. I do feel like that this, with this only being a 3 game series, you're really only going to need 3 starting pitchers. And then I also included Colin right here too as an
Okay.
emergency starter, just in case, there's an injury or Matthew Boyder showed Imanago or Jameson Tyone get in trouble early. He can take over. But I don't think we have any surprises here with the starting position players. It's been the same that we've seen pretty much the entire season. I think the only real change would be normally you'd have say Suzuki DHing and Kyle Tucker in right field, but with Kyle Tucker coming back from his injury, that kind of limits him a little bit. So I think the Cubs are kind of being a little risk averse there by just having Kyle Tucker DH and need him in good hitting shape. So there we have it.
Yeah, so you've got to for the wild card round, it is a 26-man roster. There is no single like universal roster for the wild card is what I'm reading. So basically you have a limit of 13 pitchers. So you could have up to 13 pitchers total. But
Okay.
you could basically work your roster however you want to work that roster. So um rosters can be reset in each round, obviously, as we know, but you've got, pretty much a consistent lineup here. Who you see here. What we've seen all year. To your point, and then you also had the bench on who you think will be the bench. You've got Reese McGuire making the cut. We still don't know where Miguel Amaya is in his recovery.
Right.
Don't
The
know when they anticipate him.
the problem with Miguel Amaya is, and I mean, I would love to have him there because he's obviously a better hitter than Reese McGuire is, but the top priority with catching is handling the pitchers. There are probably a decent amount of pitchers on this roster that will be there in the playoffs for the Cubs that Miguel Amaya hasn't even caught yet. We look at who I have in the bullpen here. Like he hasn't caught for Aaron Savali yet. He hasn't caught for Soroka, Rogers, Kittredge. So that would probably take a lot of getting used to rush him back into it, assuming he could play. We don't even know if
Hmm.
he can at this point. So I'm just sticking with Reese McGuire as my backup catcher for this.
Okay. I mean, I see you got Reese. There's one really interesting name that you have on here on the bench that we haven't heard of all year because I don't know if has he played a game with the Cubs yet? I know he's in the
He
minor league right now.
he has not even been activated to the roster yet, but no, a guy that they signed right before September 1st deadline to get him on the playoff roster, uh, one-time former Cub for a very, very brief time in 2020, Billy Hamilton, who could wind up being a valuable piece as a more so a pinch runner, but potentially a defensive replacement in the outfield for the Cubs that could run down some fly
Really
balls.
interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe don't want him exactly at the plate, but could get it done for you on the bases. Kind of in the Terrence
Okay.
Gore role of yesteryear.
Really interesting. I don't see him making that cut, but I mean, I could see your thought process there.
Okay,
I think like with Justin Tucker already like a wasted bat. I don't know if you could waste another position player bat, by adding on like a Billy Hamilton. I think I would rather see.
you cut out.
Ooh, can you hear me? Can you hear me at all or no? I think Praz froze. Um, Yeah, so like I was saying, I don't think that we can necessarily waste another position spot to add Billy Hamilton just because he's solely a pinch runner. Um, hey, welcome back, Mike. I was just saying, I don't think you're going to waste a position spot to add Billy Hamilton as a pinch runner just because your bench is already so light as it is. I think it's more realistic to see a Carlos Santana who's had some playoff experience and still has some power in the bat, even though I don't really trust him. I think that's still a better option than Billy Hamilton. I think you can still get your pinch running with Willie Castro if that's the case. And if Willie Castro's
Good.
playing, that means that somebody else is probably, being benched. Maybe Matt Shaw or maybe um, say a Suzuki or something. But I think you could use him as a pinch runner. And I think not only that, like I think you're all I don't know. You know what? I think the one caveat that you might have to have a point is that we don't know if Kyle Tucker is going to play the outfield or not.
This is true. Yeah, Kyle
So
Tucker. I don't think they're taking any chances with Kyle Tucker in the outfield this series.
yeah, and that's where like maybe that is the one caveat where yes, maybe they do need an additional outfielder because they're already down an outfielder there. So I mean, but again, you could play Willie Castro on the outfielder, but then you're only having four outfielders uh, versus potentially five. So I don't know. It's pretty interesting, but I do like your pitching setup. I think that this makes sense with Pomerantz. I think adding Savali. I think adding Soroka. Coming back from injury. Don't really love Taylor Rogers, but I think you traded for the guy. You hope that he could give you some outs against some lefties. Didn't look too
Well,
great against the Mets.
yeah, it didn't look too great against the Mets, but I'm thinking with Taylor Rogers is that the Padres are pretty lefty heavy in their lineup. So, you want to have that lefty you can go to, and Caleb Thielbar, like I said, when talking about the Mets, he's had some struggles lately. So, just to have that guy there in case you need to go to someone else as a lefty,
Okay,
Yeah.
fair.
I guess if you're not going to have Billy Hamilton on the roster, like you would rather have who? Carlos Santana or Kevin Alcantara, or would you add another pitcher?
I probably would have. I think, when you think playoff baseball, like, yeah, I think, man, I guess you could go either way. I think you can make the argument that, late in the game, you're down to your last out and you need some power. You want to have that guy that comes off the bench that has some power. And I think you really don't have that on the Cubs bench right now with any of these guys. Like, I think Justin Turner provides maybe a little bit, but I think he's already past, that
Mm,
part of his career. I
what about the guy I have listed on the bottom there, Moises Ballesteros?
He's not really a power guy though. I mean, he's going to give you, some singles and doubles. He's a great, he could put the ball in play. I love that about him, but I don't think he's going to give you like that late, pinch hit 2-run home run that, you might need at the end of the game, but then I think to your point, if with playoff baseball, you might have to manufacture runs a little bit more and,
Right.
the base pads, they matter a lot more. So, I don't know. I think Santana probably to me would make more sense. And again, I don't really love it, but this is more so an indictment on Jed Hoyer not building a stronger bench than it is
Right. Yeah.
me saying who I like on the bench. So, um,
Yeah. Good point.
but yeah, but I think the relievers that you pick make a lot of sense in terms of who they're facing for this round. I think Porter Hodge, obviously, that's my guy. He's obviously had a very disappointing end to the year. I think like ever since his injury, he just hasn't been the same.
Yeah, it's a shame with him because like they did try to get him in some, some later some later season games. Like he came into some of the games in Cincinnati over the weekend and that didn't go very well for him. There were a few encouraging appearances for him, but like I don't know if that's the guy you really want to trust when he missed, just about half the year with an injury and didn't look all that great when he was healthy.
Yeah, so I mean, it's going to be a tough series, man. I think San Diego. I don't know where their pitching is right now. I think Dylan Cease has kind of reverted to struggling to finish the year. Yu Darvish is, still barely getting healthy and hasn't been really strong. I think you got Nick Pivetta, who had a really great year, and he's going to be the game one starter for San Diego. But
Did you happen to see the full three starters that they put out there that the Padres announced?
I did not. So you've got, let's see, you've got Nick Pivetta against Matthew Boyd starting Tuesday, and then you've got Dylan Cease against to be determined for Wednesday. And then for Thursday, they've got you Darvish. So
Interesting. I did. I
two
did.
two
I did.
struggling pitchers for San Diego.
Yeah. One. I'll say a little surprised that Michael King is not factored into that because he's back for them. But I checked out some of his game logs. He had not worked beyond like 5 innings in all but like two of his starts since he's been back off the IL. So maybe he's just kind of their equivalent of like what I have Colin Ray listed
Long
as, like an
relief.
emergency
Yeah,
starter or long
yeah,
relief.
long
Exactly.
relief.
Yeah. Um, man. Well, I mean, so game two, you said is to be determined. They didn't officially announce that it's Shota or anyone yet.
No, and I think you and I talked about it via text before the game. I think it truly depends on how game one plays out.
Yeah.
I think like you could go with this two different ways and for two different reasons. I think if they win game one, I would probably go Jameson Tyon as the second starter.
Interesting. Okay.
I think
Well,
that
hold
you
on a second. Hold on. Jameson Tyone just pitched on Saturday. That would give him how many days of rest? That would be Sunday, Monday,
say Monday,
Tuesday,
Tuesday. He'd pitch on
Wednesday.
4 days,
No, that would be 3 days rest.
3 days
Sunday,
rest. Yeah, you're right.
yeah. So he probably couldn't go until game three.
So it probably will be Imanaga if it is.
Well, one thing that I have seen talked about a little bit on Twitter, and I don't know if there's any real consideration by Craig to do this at all. Potentially
John
an
Lester.
yeah,
John
John
Lester's coming
Lester
out of
out of
retirement.
retirement. That'd be nice. Or hey, you see who's gonna throw out the first pitch game one?
I didn't.
Jake Arrieta.
There we go. Maybe suit him up, man. He still
Yeah.
looks, dude. I don't know if you've seen him. He was in Iowa with Ben Zobrist for an
Yes.
Iowa Cubs game.
Saw that.
Both of those guys look like they can still go today.
Hmm.
They're both in great shape still. I mean, they still look like they can play.
For sure. Definitely. But what I had seen talked about a little bit on Twitter is the concept of maybe going to an opener for Shota in game two. You know, have say Michael Soroka or an Aaron Savale go, you know,
Drew
one time.
Pomerantz.
Drew Pomeranz go one time through the
Yep.
order and then go to Shota after that. So
Could
possible.
be interesting. Yeah, could be interesting. I think anything's on the table in these kinds of series, man. It's such a man, everything's a crapshoot at this point, right? Where, like I said, every little pitch matters. The one thing I will say that worries me about, and this is what really like was so disappointing in the Cade Horton, injury. I think is Cade would have been your game one starter. I think you would have seen Matthew Boyd game two, and I think you would have seen Shota Imanaga game three, which I think you're putting righty and two lefties, on the back half, which I think, Cade would have given you probably the best shot to win a game out of any of those guys, right? So I
Yeah.
think you feel better going into the rest of the series if Cade Horton puts you in a position to win, and if he doesn't, then you still have two veterans in the backhand that give you a chance, against a heavy, as you said, a heavy left-handed hitting lineup.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, look, we'll see how it all shakes out. There are some things I have found in the Padres hitting statistics that maybe it might be a blessing in disguise that it's two lefties going in the first two games, presumably for the
okay,
Cubs. Um, I mean, we're on the topic now, so I might as well just say
yeah,
it.
go for it, go for it.
So potentially a as big of a loss as Cade Horton was for the Cubs. A guy that's going to be out this series for the Padres is going to be Ramon Laureano, who was a trade acquisition from the Baltimore Orioles at the deadline. From the time he had been acquired by the Padres through the last game he played, he had been the Padres' best hitter against left-handed pitching. So presumably, Cubs are going to throw two lefties out there. You feel pretty good about that. The Padres as a whole, by the way, against left-handed pitching, not all that great this year. They only have a 95 WRC plus. I believe that ranks them about 16th or 17th in Major League Baseball. So, and I brought this stat up, I think last time we went. They've hit the third fewest home runs of any team in baseball. Only the Pirates and the Cardinals have hit fewer than they have. So the thing I feel encouraged about is that you have Shota Imanaga, who's given up a lot of home runs and is a fly ball pitcher. But if he's facing this
Yep.
squad that doesn't hit a lot of home runs, that could be the perfect remedy for him. I feel like against him specifically, the guy that I'm most worried about is Manny Machado. Beyond him, I feel like he could get through 5 innings, maybe only allow 2 or 3 runs and give the Cubs a chance to win in his start.
The one thing I will say about this series, the Cubs are going to have to get out in front early. I
Yes,
think with this
absolutely.
was specifically against the Padres, if they are down at any point by the fifth or sixth inning, that feels like a mountain to climb because
Yeah.
you have to face some of their really good back end pitchers. They've got, Robert Suarez, who's sporting a let's see, he's sporting a 2.97 ERA this year. You face old Cub Jeremiah Estrada, who's hitting a 3.45 ERA, and he has a
I've
whip
heard
of
that he's been struggling lately, though.
a
I've
little
heard that
bit. He's
he's
still got a
not
whip
been
of
all that great.
116.
Okay.
But then you face Pittsburgh, PA native Mason Miller as the closer, and he is not having a bad year. He's pitching to the tune of a 2.63 ERA with a .91 WHIP.
Yeah.
Really doesn't put a lot of guys on base. Really shuts out the game as soon as it kind of gets to him. So 104 strikeouts over 61 innings for Mason Miller. Um,
Wow. That is insane, man.
not promising if you get into the sixth or seventh inning and you're trailing. So I think, what bodes well is some of the starting pitching for San Diego, but I think the Cubs really need to take advantage early and often, and really put themselves in a position where they can be out in front. And again, I know this is common sense. Like you want to go into any game with the lead, but there are certain teams that can claw back and fight back. I don't know if I feel super comfortable with the Cubs being a clawback kind of team because, I think there's been previous years where we've seen them, the comeback Cubs, right? Where I think
Right.
2016, I can count so many games where they were down and they just never felt like they were out of the game. This team doesn't feel like that to me. So they have been primarily really good this year when they're out in front, and they haven't really given up a lot of games when they get out in front. So, um, and again, I know that's the recipe for any baseball team in the playoffs is get out in front, get a lead, let your bullpen views, what they got to do. But man, San Diego's bullpen is frightening. So that's probably my biggest concern heading into the series.
I I in complete agreement with you there. They actually did just flash up on Marquee right now that like the Cubs do struggle hitting high velocity pitchers with, which we know San Diego will have a lot of coming out after their starters come out. One really encouraging thing that I'll give credit to the person who tweeted this earlier today, Full Count Tommy on Twitter. The NL bullpen since the trade deadline with the highest strikeout rate is not a surprise. It's the Padres with 28.9% strikeout rate
Mm,
during that time. The team that's in second for bullpen strikeout rate is your Chicago Cubs at
wow,
28.4%. Yeah,
that's surprising.
yes. So I feel like it's just as much of a, tug of war there as far as like, if the Cubs jump out to an early lead and they have that lead through 5, 6 innings, you know, you feel pretty good about what the bullpen can do at that point, especially now that Daniel Palencia is back and seemingly, back to what he had normally been before, he had his troubles as closer and then went on the IL. But, hopefully they rely on all the games that I've been frustrated with Craig not using Brad Keller in regular season games when I thought he should have. I hope he's the guy that he turns to, like first guy out of the bullpen, assuming that like it's not any sort of matchup based move that he's making. Um,
So the San Diego has the best bullpen in the National League this year. No surprise there. They have an ERA of 3.06. The third best would be if the Cubs get past the Padres, would be the Brewers at
mm,
3.63. The Cubs have the fifth best bullpen in the National League with the 3.78 behind St. Louis Cardinals, which was surprising to me. So
well, I mean, how much of that for the Cardinals was like early in the season before they traded like Ryan Helsley and some of the other guys they did. So I
I
mean,
will say, one of the concerning things for me with the Cubs bullpen is they're not the worst team in the National League, but they have given up 75 home runs as a bullpen,
mhm.
where San Diego's given up 56. So almost 20 home runs less.
I would like to know maybe what San Diego did on the road as far as their bullpen arms have given up because, Petco Park is a very tough place
True.
to hit in.
Yep.
So,
Very true.
yeah. But that is a fair concern for the home runs there. But as I said, like I feel like a team like the Cubs, this might be the perfect matchup for guys who aren't the most strikeout heavy pitchers that do pitch to contact, that are fly ball pitchers. The Padres don't really hit a lot of home runs. One guy in particular who I mentioned this to you on Saturday, one guy who doesn't hit lefties very well for a right handed hitter on the Padres, Fernando Tatis. He's only got a 696 OPS for the season against left handed pitchers. He's hit righties very much
That's
better.
scary. Yeah, that's still scares me. I feel like that's going to be the guy that
Right.
like out of
Exactly.
nowhere starts breaking out.
Yeah, you never know when that sleeping giant's going to wake up. Exactly.
Yeah. So all right. Well, let's talk about some of the other playoff rounds that are going to be happening this weekend. I'm going to pull up the playoff picture here.
Okay.
So we've got, this Cincinnati Reds that obviously squeaked in on the last game of the year. Both teams lost, the Mets
Mhm.
and the Reds to finish the season, but the Reds have the tiebreaker, so they will actually go on the road to play LA. And then, as we said, you've got San Diego coming to Chicago. Detroit lost the division in the final couple games of the year, and now they have to go on the road to face Cleveland, which is a short drive from Cleveland to Detroit. But and then you've
Right.
got the Red Sox facing the Yankees in New York. So that
Right.
old rivalry is renewed in the wild card round.
Hey, first time I think in the era of like the improved pace of play too, thankfully, because like all those Yankees Red Sox games in the
Oh
2000s
God, I
and
know they're like
2010s.
7 hours long.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But that's very exciting. You got two divisional matchups on the AL side. And then, you got a pretty damn good pitching staff with the Reds facing off against one of the best lineups in MLB history on the Dodgers. And we talked all we did about the Cubs and Padres. So we'll go around it now. Where would you want to start at? You want to start on the AL side or
Yeah, let's start on the AL side. I mean, you've got, like I said, you've got Detroit facing Cleveland after losing the division. Now they have to play on the road against a very hot Cleveland team, where
right?
Detroit has not been hot at all. They've been incredibly cold. um, who do you got in that series? I mean, who do you got in how many games? Let's do that. Let's do this. We'll make our predictions and the amount of games.
Well, the thing with Cleveland is like they do not hit very well. I mean, they
They do not.
outside of Jose Ramirez, there are not a lot of big bats. I guess Stephen Kwan too, but you look at their baseball reference page, there's not a lot of hundreds in the OPS pluses there. A lot of below
No.
average hitters. I guess the one nice thing for Detroit has been that because this series didn't have any, or because the race for the AL Central didn't have any implications for getting a first round bye in the playoffs, that they didn't have to really, rush up Tarek Skubal to pitch like the last series of the year. He's fresh to go game one.
Okay.
Um, so I'm gonna go Detroit, and I think it'll be fairly quick.
Wow.
I'm gonna go Detroit in an upset in
Wow.
two. I don't think Cleveland has really the starting pitching star power. I don't think they have any offensive star power. I feel like Detroit doesn't really have many superstars, but they do have a lot of just really good hitters and possibly the best pitcher in the American League at this point in Tarek Skubal. So I'm
Okay.
going Detroit in two. The only thing I worry about there is Cleveland does have a really damn good bullpen. It's probably the mirror image of what Cubs and Padres looks like, on the American League side. In that
Mm.
you worry about Cleveland's bullpen, but you don't worry as much about Cleveland's offense as you probably would with San Diego's offense.
I'm going to write the hot hand here. And I think that, playoff baseball is a little bit different, as we know. I think the in between the ears is just as important as what happens, in the box and on the bases. And I think the way that Detroit has played recently, I mean, just coughing up the division at the very end,
Right.
I don't think that's by default. And I will say Cleveland had a bunch of lucky wins. I mean, there was a game where when they tied Detroit to tie for first place, they scored like 2 or 3 runs without ever hitting the ball out of the infield. I think it was in that game.
Mhm.
And but I do think that that's what ultimately wins games in the playoffs, right? So I think Cleveland does a good job of manufacturing runs, keeping you on your heels,
Yeah.
um, making you make mistakes. And I think Detroit has shown that they're very prone to making mistakes, and they have been the last month and a half. So I'm going to say Cleveland is going to win this series, and I'm going to say that they're going to win it in three. I think they lose game one.
Okay.
I think they lost. Scuba lost the game that he played against Cleveland the last outing, and that was the when he hit David Fry in the face on
Oh
that bunt attempt.
yeah. Oh
Uh,
man, that was rough.
that was super brutal, but he lost that game. I think he rights the ship in this game. They win game one, but I think Cleveland goes on to win the final two and takes that series 2 games to one.
For sure. That is I want to say that's a rematch from last season too, in the DS possibly.
I
They
don't
played each
remember. I'd
other
have to go back. All
because
right, so I'm gonna write this down.
I know Cleveland was there in the ALCS against the Yankees, and then lost to them. But
All right, so you've got Detroit in 2.
Detroit in 2, yes.
All right, I've got Cleveland in 3.
Okay,
All right. Next up, we've got the Red Sox and we've got the Yankees.
your Red
Now,
Sox. Yep.
My Red Sox, I am that is my AL team. Um, and you've got a hot New York Yankees team who had been played very lackluster leading into the final couple weeks and then got really hot at the end here and really pushed Toronto for that division, which, it got a lot closer than I thought it was going to be. But um, how are you feeling about this series?
This is one where we're going to talk about it probably with the next series as well too. But the the Yankees feel like a team that has coasted a little bit this season, and I feel like you know, they got the great, borderline MVP caliber season from Judge. We'll see if it's him or Cal Raleigh, as we talked about last week.
Yeah.
They got our old friend Cody Bellinger. They got a very high-powered lineup that can beat you in a bunch of different ways. Jazz Chisholm is really good.
Yep.
I believe
He's having a great year.
Roman Anthony's going to be out for the Red Sox.
Ooh, I
Um,
didn't know that. Okay, that hurts.
yeah, uh, or at least from what I had heard on the podcast I did last night. That's what my one co-host told me. So that's a tough one to predict. I would lean towards the Yankees. I think it's going to go 3 either way you go, but Yankees at home. Um, they have a rotation I have a little bit more faith in with Freed and Rodon at the top of it, whereas with the Red
Yeah,
Sox,
you got
you
just
really
scared
only have
Crochet.
Crochet. Yeah, so I'm going to go Yankees there.
Okay. What? How many games?
I'm going to go Yankees in 3.
I also have the Yankees in 3. I think Boston wins game 1 with Crochet, and then after that, I think the Yankees just take care of business over games 2 and 3, which breaks my heart. But I think, my head is telling me that the Yankees are just a little bit deeper of a roster
Right.
and have a little bit more talent. So I think they're going to end up taking the series in 3.
I do legitimately wonder too, like, after all the history of the Yankees with the 27 rings and everything, but ever since 2004, the Red Sox have kind of been the monster under the bed for them, especially when they play each other in the playoffs. I wonder,
Yeah.
like, are Yankees fans, if they win this series, going to celebrate it as much as they would have like one of their World Series, like finally beating the Red Sox after all the years of the Red Sox beating them in the playoffs?
Okay. All right. We will do the Cubs in San Diego at the end of our show.
For
So the
sure.
last series that we will cover in the wild card will be Cincinnati against the Dodgers.
Cincinnati against the Dodgers, definitely. This is probably going to be like the lowest scoring series of the wild card round, I would imagine, because you got a really good pitching staff in Cincinnati, and you got a pitching staff
Yeah.
that hasn't really been there all year for the Dodgers, but like is coming together at the right time. They got Blake Snell back. Going to have Emmett Sheehan going for him. I think they're going to have Kershaw out of the bullpen for this series. So um, these games are going to be in Dodger Stadium.
Yeah.
Um, also, Otani, I think, will be pitching at least one of these games. I don't
Otani
know
will
if
be
he's back
pitching.
yet.
Yep. He's pitching.
Um, the Dodgers, like I said with the Yankees, feel like a team that has they didn't have the greatest of regular seasons. I feel like they're saving their best baseball for October. Um, I mean, it's going to be tough against this Reds pitching staff, but I feel like the Reds lineup does not really intimidate me all that much. The Dodgers have all the stars in the world. I'm gonna go. It's gonna be 2 very hard fought games, but I'm gonna go Dodgers in 2.
I'm going to go Dodgers in two as well. And it looks like Blake Snell's going to start game one. Yamamoto is going to go game two. And I think Otani would be slated for three if it gets to three.
Okay.
But there's no pitcher set for game two. I would assume it's probably Nick Lodolo, but Hunter Green is going to be starting game one of that series. So
Okay.
that first game is going to be tough. But I'm also going to go LA in two.
Yeah. Yep. All in
Okay.
agreement there. If they haven't announced anything for game 2 yet, did they announce anything for game 3? Because I know like they do
No,
still have a pretty good rotation with, after
yeah, they
even after
haven't.
Green, Abbott, Lodolo. Yeah. So for a 3-game series, like I will say this. This is probably in a best of 3 series, and I don't know that the Dodgers have ever played in one of these wild card round series. I guess they did they against the Giants that one year? Um, come on, Mark. Don't say that. Um, anyways, I don't think the Dodgers have ever played in a best of 3, and when you only have to win 2 games, that does feel risky for the Dodgers. If this series were a best of 5 or a best of 7, I'd feel that it would be a much easier series for the Dodgers. But I think it should still be them winning the first 2 of them, but they feel
Okay.
like they're not going to be the easiest.
Okay. All right. So we will save the Cubs and Padres series. Did you want to go? Do you want to wait until next week to maybe talk about some of the other rounds just to see how it plays out?
Yeah, that works for me. Assuming you'll be available then. You'll be back from out of
I
town then?
should, yeah.
Okay.
Actually, oh no, I won't be. I'll be in Indianapolis. So maybe we should go
Okay.
over
Yeah,
this.
we can do that. And
All right. So
we'll save bottom right for later.
yeah, perfect. So we've got so that series you've got Detroit versus Seattle.
Yes. And you got Cleveland versus Seattle.
Yep. And then so who you got in that series?
So that one, Seattle is a team that like I always kind of like just they're one that like they feel so far away and you don't really pay much attention to. And then you look at their baseball reference page and you do a deep dive and see who they got, and it's like, oh man, their pitching is really good. And they have a lineup that's much better than it has been in years past, especially after the moves they made at the deadline, getting Josh Naylor, getting Eugenio Suarez. Um, so to me, I mean, I'll give the Tigers 1, maybe 2 games if they can factor in maybe 2 Scooble starts. I feel like this is the Mariners' year to at least make some noise in the playoffs. I'm going to go
Okay.
Mariners in, I will say 4.
Okay. You got Seattle in four. I also have Seattle in four against Cleveland. I think Cleveland's luck, I don't even want to say luck, but I want to say their hot streak finally fizzles out after a very grueling series against Detroit with a lot of like tight, low run games.
Mm-hmm.
That I think they're gonna just man, I think they're gonna duke it out. So I'm gonna say they go into Seattle just beat up and just tired from that series, and I think Seattle will take care of business. So I got Seattle in four.
Okay, there
All
we
right,
go.
so we both had the Yankees over the Red Sox. Unfortunately for me, but that
You,
would mean
you,
that they go
you know
to
what?
Toronto.
One quick aside on the Seattle series. I, personally, I maybe this is me hating on Cleveland. I think that if they face Cleveland in the LDS, no, the Cardinals did not make the playoffs, man. I'm sorry to disappoint you, and I'm sorry to disappoint our good friend Ryan, who's a big Cardinals fan. He's not. He's actually a really just negative Cubs fan. Anyways, um, like I said, Cleveland, if they make it past Detroit, uh, I think that series only goes 3 because of
Okay,
how bad Cleveland's lineup is in a not so hitter friendly park. They would probably make pretty quick work of Cleveland.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, so you've got New York. We both got New York against Toronto.
Okay.
Toronto obviously won the division in the final week of the year.
Yep.
Toronto's been playing some pretty good baseball to end the year. The series would start in Toronto. They've got home field advantage throughout the playoffs on the AL side.
Hmm.
Who you got in that series?
Um, I think I'm going to go Yankees again in that series. I like their pitching a little bit more than I like Toronto's. Um, I will say Toronto's lineup is maybe a smidge better than the Yankees. I think it goes maybe a little bit deeper, but um, I think pitching wise, the Yankees have the advantage. Pitching wins in the playoffs. I'll go Yankees in 5 there.
I too have the Yankees in 5.
Wow. Okay. We're more aligned
I
than we
agree.
thought.
I agree with you on everything you said, so I'm good with that. All right. Last series we've got we both had LA winning in 2, so that means that LA would advance to play Philadelphia.
Yes. Which
Um
honestly, that might be the best series we see in the playoffs.
Kyle Schwarber is playing out of his freaking mind, and if it weren't for Shohei Ohtani, I think would be the clear front runner for NL MVP.
Yeah.
Um, if you recall my World Series prediction at the beginning of the year, and this probably should have made me change my first round predictions, but my World Series prediction this year was Detroit versus Philadelphia. So
Hmm.
I am going to go, I'm going to stick with my prediction that the Phillies are, well, I don't know if I'm going to stick with my full prediction, but because of my earlier prediction in the year, and I think just the way that the Phillies are set up with their bullpen, and I know they've got some injuries on the rotation, but things can be shortened up in the playoffs a little bit more in that sense. So I'm going to say that Philly is going to win that series in 4.
Interesting. Okay. Um, I'm going to go the other way. Like I said, I think the Dodgers are saving their best baseball for October. I think that Philly, although they still do have a really deep rotation, they're missing Zach Wheeler, who is their best pitcher. Um, I think the Dodgers will pull it out, and I think it'll be in a very hard fought 5. Um, and it'll probably, like I said, it'll probably wind up being the best playoff series of the year that we see. By the way, did you know that this Phillies core and this Dodgers core, this is the first time these two teams are meeting in the playoffs? Which,
That's
like, is
insane.
yeah, which, two teams that are regularly making deep playoff runs.
All right.
Yep.
So again, we're waiting for that last round, so we'll do the NL at the end.
Okay.
So let's do the ALCS because at this point we've got you and I both aligned, and we have Seattle and New York in the ALCS.
Man, wow. Oh, that's so tough. That is so tough, man. Um, so that will start in Seattle.
Yep.
Man. To me, I you know what? This feels like a series where Cal Raleigh knows he's not going to be the
MVP.
overwhelming favorite to win the MVP when he probably should,
So
and
this
he
is the
goes off.
revenge series.
The revenge series, exactly.
Okay.
I will
This is
go.
the Michael Jordan 1993 series where Charles Barkley won the MVP and Jordan goes off and averages 40 points per game in that series. So
Yes,
you're calling Cal Raleigh the Michael Jordan of the 93 finals. I love it.
yes, that is
Okay.
exactly right.
All right.
Yeah. You know what, Mariners. I feel like they're, obviously we wouldn't say this as Cubs fans as a team that's going to be in the playoffs this year, but like if they weren't in the playoffs, they would probably be the team that I would be rooting the hardest for because they're the one team that has never made a World Series. They feel like America's darling.
Okay.
So I'm going to go Mariners in, I will say 6 games over the Yankees.
Okay. All right. For the first time in the American League, I am on the opposite end of the spectrum with you here. I think that experience matters. I think that New York obviously has a lot of playoff experience amongst their roster, whether it's Cody Bellinger, Max Fried. I think, you've got, I want to say Rodon was on those White Sox playoff teams too, if I'm not
He
mistaken.
was. Yep, that's right.
Um, so you've got some playoff experience there, and I don't think you have a lot of playoff experiences in Seattle. Um, and I think, they come off a series, playing against a lonely offense, again, on my side against Cleveland, in my opinion, and my prediction. So I think they hit a wall. Their pitching holds up well, but I think there's some close games, and I think New York can win some of those close games with that experience. So I'm going to say New York in 6.
Okay. We both got to go in 6, so will be a hard
All
fought
right.
series no matter what. And then I guess we got to save the NL side for
Yeah.
later. So
Yeah. All right. Let's wrap up here. We've got on the state flying the W's, and then we'll do Cubs series predictions, and then the NL predictions after that. So,
alrighty.
all right, you got an on the state for me. So go ahead, shoot.
I do have it on this date for you. So, and this will be a shorter description than I normally give. It was on this date in the great year of 2016. Cubs already had everything wrapped up. They at this point had the division wrapped up. They had home field advantage throughout the playoffs wrapped up. They had everything wrapped up you could possibly imagine at this point. And they were wrapping up a series in Pittsburgh against the Pirates. And a very rare occurrence happened in this game. There was some rain in the forecast in Pittsburgh. Do you happen to know what the result of this game was?
So you said, say it one more time for me. You had
Well, okay, so
rain. There was rain in Pittsburgh.
there was rain in
What
Pittsburgh.
what year? What year?
2016.
Rain in Pittsburgh.
Yep.
2016. I was in Pittsburgh that year.
You may have been at this game, maybe, or maybe one of the games in the series. I don't know.
And you said there was something result of the rain in Pittsburgh.
A very rare occurrence as a result of the rain in Pittsburgh.
Very rare occurrence. I want to say, was this the year that game was not played and there was no remake, so they didn't end up playing 162 games that year?
You are very, very close, but that is not it. Do you want to give another guess, or?
I'm trying to think what happened that year, because I know I was living in there that year, but they wrapped up that division so freaking far. I mean, they basically had the division won in September, the beginning of September.
Yep.
It was like I think it was the first or second week of September they had that division locked up. Yeah. I'm assuming it was a rain out.
Well, you could say a rain out or a washout. There were 5 innings played in this game.
I'm drawing a blank. Was it a postponed game that just was never resumed, or was it resumed?
So you're kind of right. I'll give it to you.
Okay. Yeah. Shoot.
If you ever take a look at what the Cubs' record in the regular season in 2016 was, they went 103, 58, and 1. And that was the one they tied in that game.
Okay. So they didn't finish the game, and they were tied in that game, and there was no reason to actually.
Exactly. That game
finished
with a 1-1 tie.
I knew it was something like that.
Yep, exactly. That game was, if I remember right, was started by, do you remember, well, he's still an active player with the Brewers now, Rob Zastryzny.
Yeah, I remember Rob.
A left-handed pitcher, was drafted in 2013, the second round, after Chris Bryant was drafted in the first round. That was, I believe, his first career start in the big leagues.
Okay.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Let's wrap up here. We've got flying the W's and taking the L's.
Hello. You play to win the game.
Addison is next. Doors open on the left at Addison.
I'll say one thing. Go. Let's go. That's a W. That's E1. That's E1. That's a W.
Is a L7 winning.
All right. I've got a couple W's and L's for myself. Actually, I'm going to give myself a half of a W and half of an L. Um,
Okay.
for two different reasons. Okay,
Okay.
the Chicago Bears yesterday got a very much needed win. They lost 2 games last year from a blocked field goal. This year,
Right.
there was a role reversal where they blocked a field goal to seal the win. Caleb Williams drove down the field the final drive of the game. They scored a touchdown to take the lead. Defense held up, made it a really far field goal attempt, and won. I'm going to give myself some credit here. I made a purchase on Saturday that I feel had a lot to do with the win because I brought some good juju onto the Bears. So I'm going to give myself a mini W for that. But I'm also going to give myself an L because you're going to find out why once I show you.
Okay.
I purchased some branded Crocs. Uh, little claws, fur. Uh, they've got some fur on the inside. They've got the patches. Um, these little claws are actually the gibbets. If you're familiar with Crocs, they come off, so I can take them on and
Okay.
off. I wore these bad boys yesterday, and lo and behold, the Bears win a game, which
Nice.
is not a common occurrence for this Bears team. Now, I give myself the L because I had a friend that told me dudes that buy Crocs have basically essentially given up on life. So I'm gonna give myself the L because apparently I've given up on life and I've accepted my the entering of my 40s because I just don't give a
Oh
shit
my
anymore.
God.
I thought these things were so ugly, they're so hideous, and they're also Crocs. And that's half the reason I bought them was because they're so fucking ridiculous that I was like, I'm gonna do this. Why not? Like who do I have to
Mhm.
impress? I'm married, I have a kid, I'm fucking
Right.
40 years old. Like I have nobody to impress in my life anymore. And I'm all about that comfort at this point. And you know what? Crocs are comfortable and I wear them around the house. They're my house shoes. I can go outside, I can mow my lawn, I can grab the mail. Uh, I don't give a shit. So I'm like literally the next step is buying clothes from Costco, I feel for me.
Okay.
So
That is something I do frequently. A lot of my clothes are from Costco. I
I
have
don't
no
give a
shame
yeah.
about that.
Yeah, man. You hit an age where it's like, I don't give a shit anymore. Whatever, man. Comfort and affordability, right? So uh I got that. My L obviously also goes to the Chicago Bums. We have now gone another complete baseball season where they have yet to pay up their bet. I
Man.
think we need to repropose this pay up now. And I want to see them in Packers gear now. Because
Ooh.
they have
Ooh.
not paid their debt. And I think we need to go on their show and we need to call them out and they need to wear Packers gear at this point because they have not paid their bet. I mean, this is interest. So I'm collecting interest on an unpaid bet. And to
Yep.
me, that interest is the gear has to get worse, right?
Yes.
So
The gear has to insult just all of Chicago, not half of Chicago.
yes,
Exactly.
there you go. All right, so that's my W's and my L's for the week. So
I'll,
what do you got?
I'll say this about your Crocs situation. I've never been a Crocs person. However, the person I know who is like the biggest Crocs person, and I think she may be watching, is my friend Ashley. She actually lives up in Wisconsin, is a big Brewers and Packers fan.
Ooh,
And I'm thinking, those might look pretty good on her. She might like some of those Bears Crocs with the claws on them.
I will
Um,
say, I would probably bet that the Green Bay Packers ones would be amazing because they already look like grated cheese, right? Like, you know what I mean? They look like the cheese block.
yeah,
If
yeah,
you
it'll
did like
blend in
yellow
any.
Crocs,
Yeah,
I mean, it's freaking perfect.
right. That's an ugly image in my head. All right.
All right, who
All
you got?
right. I will stick with the Bears for my W, and
Okay.
I will give a huge W to a guy who a little over a year ago today was kind of public enemy number one, but has put together a nice couple of games here for the Bears, has contributed to 2 wins back-to-back games. I'm gonna go Tyreek Stevenson. Had
I like
the
that.
first fumble against the Cowboys, and then what did he have an interception against the Raiders? Do I have that right? Or there was
Yes,
some
he did. Yep.
that he had.
Yeah. He
Yeah.
did. He had a
So
pick. Yep.
so I mean, I wanted to cut him on the day that he was taunting the fans in Washington, and then wound up tipping that pass that wound up being known as a fail Mary. But you know, I'm glad they didn't. A very nice chance at redemption for Tyreek Stevenson. He gets a W.
I love that. I mean, he definitely redeemed himself. He's played very well the last couple weeks, especially with the amount of injuries that the secondary has faced and just the total defense in general. They honestly, the defense has showed up when they've needed to, and I think he is a big part of that. So I like that. Okay,
Yep.
you got anything else?
I am just racking my brain for a second. I guess I will go with an L to Mike Schilt for what we talked about earlier, or not Mike Schilt, the Cardinals manager, Ollie Marmol.
Marmol.
Mike Schultz is
Okay,
the Padres manager now. Duh, no. Hopefully he
that's
gets an
right.
L
Yeah.
next time we record. Um, but yeah, Ollie Marmol, don't be a coward. Let Michael Bush have a chance at a cycle there. And then I think I will go with the Mets for an L for just a pretty unprecedented, choke job down the stretch. I think if you look at their records since either the trade deadline or the All-Star break, they had a record that was as bad as the Rockies, and I think the Reds were only about a 500 team. So, it was there for the taking for them to make it into the playoffs as that last wild card team. And, one of the most talented teams in baseball will not be playing in October this season. So, L to the Mets.
Okay, love it. I might as well throw Detroit in there too for blowing that 15 and a half game lead.
That's a fair point, although they do have a chance to redeem themselves here. So we'll see how that goes for them.
Okay, fair. All right. All right, so let's finish up here with our predictions. So the Cubs obviously have the home field advantage, which they fought till the very bitter end here. Who you got? Who you got in the series?
Well, I'm forever the optimist on this podcast, even without Cade Horton. I feel like this matchup for the Cubs is a favorable one with lefties going in the first two games. I feel like the Cubs offense has resurged at the most perfect time they possibly could. The bullpen has looked really damn good. Hopefully they make the right moves with Caleb Theobar and not letting him face righties in situations where, they could potentially pull him out. This is going to surprise you. I feel like it's the only way they can win because I feel like the longer this series goes, it favors the Padres more. I'm going to say Cubs in 2.
Wow. Okay, that is really bold. I think the Cubs have been so inconsistent this year. I want to be positive here. I don't feel really great about their playoff hopes, but I do think that, to your point, they do play a little bit more of a favorable series against this team. So I'm going to say the Cubs in 3.
All right. Look at you, optimistic John over here.
I know. I can't believe I'm saying it. My heart, I think, is leading more than my head, to be honest with you. But I mean, we are a Cubs podcast, so I've got to be positive here, right? I gotta have some hope. So that would mean that the Cubs would advance and face the Milwaukee Brewers in that round. They would have to go up to Milwaukee in a best of 5 series, which I mean, the Cubs I think had a 1 game advantage over Milwaukee in the regular season, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Yes, Cubs won the season series 7-6. And you know something, the Cubs, they are kind of the one team that you look at what they do against the Brewers, the fact that the Brewers are a team that, kind of like the Padres, does not hit a lot of home runs. They depend on BABIP a lot more.
Okay.
Maybe you get Cade Horton back by then.
Hopefully.
I feel like the Cubs could beat the Brewers in October too.
Yeah. And how many games?
I'll go a hard-fought 5 games.
All right.
Yes.
I also agree. I think the Cubs match up against the Brewers well, and I think that if Cade Horton comes back, I think that they have. It's another series where I think it favors the Cubs lineup. So,
Yeah.
and then also I think just because I think this is a crapshoot for both teams. You've had a Milwaukee team that really hasn't been able to advance in the playoffs and typically chokes, but you also have Craig Counsell on the other side now who has done the same with those same Milwaukee Brewers. So let me be the optimist for once, and I'm going to say Chicago in 5. So that means you've got the LA Dodgers against the Chicago Cubs in the NLCS. I have the Philadelphia Phillies in the CS against the Cubs. I'll go first.
Okay.
I'm gonna make it real simple here. Phillies in 5. I think they are going to. I'm just going to rip the
Yeah.
Band-Aid off. I don't think the Cubs are good enough to beat um, Philadelphia. I just don't think their pitching stacks up. I don't think their bullpen stacks up. I think the Phillies lineup is better. And I think Kyle Schwarber would have his revenge series for having Jed let
Oh,
him walk
yeah,
away.
that's a good point.
And Schwarber in October is just pure magic. So I'm going to go Phillies in 5 and end the Cubs run there. So you got LA and Chicago. Who you got?
I got LA and Chicago. Before I get to that, I will say I do think that if it winds up being Cubs and Phillies in the NLCS, Phillies will probably still win. I would give the Cubs maybe one more game, maybe even 2, just because two of the games that the Cubs played head to head against the Phillies this year, they wound up going extra innings. The Phillies won both of those games, but an extra innings in the regular season is a lot different than the extra innings in the playoffs. No Manfred man, no ghost runner on second base. Could potentially go a little bit differently, but I do think the Phillies would have the Cubs number there. I would probably pick the Phillies in 6.
Okay.
And against the Dodgers, oh man. So that series would start in LA. It would go 2 in LA, 3 in Chicago. If necessary, 3 in Chicago. For a long time, the Dodgers were the team that I was hoping that the Cubs would see in the wild card series, that if the Padres were to somehow pass up the Dodgers in the NL West lead, because again, it's a lot easier to beat the Dodgers when you only have to beat them twice as opposed to 3 or 4 games.
Yep.
But in a series that's best of 7, you're going to see every damn bit of the Dodgers, and I think it's going to be way too much for the Cubs. I would go Dodgers in 5 games. I hate to say it.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you got LA in 5. So that means you effectively would have Seattle versus LA, and I have New York versus Philly. So who is your World Series champ between Seattle and LA?
I mean, it's crazy. You brought up really good points when you picked the Yankees over the Mariners in the ALCS, that they haven't been there. I do wonder, hypothetically, if this were to happen, that they get past the Yankees and they win the AL pennant, like how much of their inexperience would play a factor in it. They would have home field advantage, Seattle would, because they had the better regular season record. They finished at a higher seed.
Okay.
And the Dodgers would be coming off of winning a World Series and a lot of years of making deep playoff runs. Oh,
Okay.
man. You know what? Give me the team that I would probably be rooting for if the Cubs weren't in it. I'm going to say the Mariners win it in 7 games for the first time in franchise history.
Wow. So you've got the Seattle Mariners going all the way. Big dumper
Yep.
getting stunned for the MVP, but getting potentially a World Series MVP, huh?
Yes.
Okay.
Give me
All
Seattle.
right. My prediction at the beginning of the year was that the Philadelphia Phillies would win the World Series. I am sticking with that. I feel pretty good about that. I am going to say that they are going to play the Yankees, and that is going to go all 7. But I do think that the Phillies prevail. They will have home field in that series. So I'm going to say the Phillies win it at home in 7.
Okay. Hey, if they had Zach Wheeler, I would be predicting them to win every series they play, more than likely, and probably in in all those series, I would probably say that they'd lose no more than one game in each of them. But it is a bit of a challenge for them, and we'll see what kind of uphill battle they have as the playoffs go on for them.
Okay. All right, folks, you heard it here. We've got the Chicago Cubs predicted to win the wild card round. Mike has them winning in 2 games, very boldly. I have them winning in 3 because I just don't think that this team is consistent enough to sweep a series. I think Mike is having some difficulties here. Are you back, Mike? You good?
Yep,
okay.
We're good.
Oh. So I just don't think the Cubs are consistent enough and just not a good enough team to sweep series. So I'm going to say that the Cubs win this in 3. And then we've got our World Series prediction. So I think we'll be back in a couple weeks because I'll be on the road again on Monday and Tuesday, and then I'll be in South Carolina for a wedding. But I think I'll be back that following Monday. So we'll either be talking about the Cubs, playing in the NLDS that week, or we will be wrapping up our show. So
Right.
let's hope we can keep it going because October is much more fun when the Cubs are in it.
Absolutely.
Let's be honest.
There is one thing I do want to close with. I was texting with someone who I'd been an acquaintance with since about 2007. If you saw a certain Instagram story of mine over the last week or so, you may have a hint of who that is. But a couple days ago, I'll wait to reveal the name on this, but someone who grew up a big fan of Detroit sports, I sent a message to him, giving him some condolences because a broadcaster for the Tigers and Red Wings, Ray Lane, had passed away, and wanted to send my condolences, tell him I was sorry for his loss, and the conversation went on a little bit, and I asked him if he might possibly be attending any of the Cubs Padres games at all. He said he will not be, but he says that he wishes them luck. And that person who I was in communication with is former Cubs play-by-play TV announcer Len Casper. So, Len,
oh wow,
thank you very much for your well wishes to the Cubs, and hopefully as these playoffs go on, maybe we might see you at Wrigley. Maybe we'll see. Kind of miss you on the mic, Len. So.
Yeah, and I did see your on this day last week. Obviously, we didn't shoot, but there was a game where Len Casper called you out for when you were a kid.
Yes, when I was
saying
13 years old.
You're going to take Len Casper's job, which very bold. And hey, listen, this podcast may be really small right now, but who knows, man? Never say never.
Exactly. Never say never.
All right, y'all. Well, Cubs Padres starting tomorrow. Matthew Boyd, game 1. It is a 2:08 pitch Central Time. I unfortunately will miss both games because I will be at work, like most Americans, on a Tuesday afternoon. I also will be in Vancouver, which is 2 hours behind. So this is the noon game. I can't sneak out of work to go to a bar and watch it, in Canada, but I'll be watching the scoreboard on my phone and just kind of trying to keep track. So Mike, hopefully you could keep me abreast here, but let's go Cubs. Let's take care of business. Let's continue this run. 92 wins this year. Let's keep this playoff dream alive, and let's go try to contend for a World Series, even if I don't think they're going to win it this year.
Hey, anything can happen in October. Let's
you never know.
Do the best with our Cubs.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody. As always, let's fly that W and go Cubbies.
Go Cubs, go.
All right, let's go.